Hey guys, Carl here, and it's time for Cultivate with Carl. It's your weekly update, and we're going to take a look around the garden today. And it's been kind of crazy weather. Our last update was, we were getting ready for the air show. We were fighting off those little army worms or the caterpillars or whatever they were. And to that point, now you should have seen the second video on how I dealt with them. And I pretty much knocked them back. And the problem was, once you knock them back using the BT that I used, you actually have to get out there and reapply again because there are other, I guess, eggs or whatever. So essentially what happened was after that video, I came out here, all the caterpillars were dead, good to go, took a couple days, where I wasn't paying as much attention, and then bam, the caterpillars were right back. I had to reapply again. So, that is another lesson learned from this year, and that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about what are some of the mistakes that I made planting and planning this garden, and I've made a few doozies that I'm going to have to get myself out of, and we're going to walk through that together. But other than that, things are going well. I'm starting to harvest out of the garden. I've gotten my first cucumbers, my first snap beans, or pole beans. And then I'm not too sure how much the wind is blowing on us here, but things are starting to pop, and it's really looking good. I got a whole boatload of tomatoes over there. I'm pretty excited about that, but also that's one of my problems. So my tomatoes, we have a little problem with overcrowding, but we're going to look at that here in a second. So let's start out by taking the garden tour, and then we're going to talk about each of these problems when we come up to them. Okay, here on our first bed, we have the lettuce bed, and you can see we're getting some little weed pressure in the beds. This is oak trees or something, not something that I put in there. We'll want to get rid of that. These are some flowers that I did plant, but we have little weed pressure. So even in raised beds, you are going to get weed pressure. Now, this was the lettuce bed, if you remember, and we had butter crunch lettuce. And the mistake that I made, having never tried butter crunch lettuce before, was that I planted a whole bed of it, not knowing that if I liked it or not. So by the time it come time to eat it, I found that it wasn't really to my liking, and a lot of it ended up in the compost because it bolted early. So it bolted, probably not early, but probably right when it should have. But I did not find it that flavorful, and then by the time I did get to it, it was bitter. So so it was bitter. This is not that bitter, but it's not that good either. So butter crunch lettuce, let that be a lesson that probably not going to plant so much of that next year. If I do plant butter crunch, I'll probably stick with a head lettuce. Something more traditional, lesson learned. Okay, here we go. These are potatoes. The next couple beds we'll look at are the potatoes and the squirrel patrol. And as you can see, these potatoes are getting to where they're about ready to be dug up. And I did at least where I did mark them. So these look like they should be ready around June, and these are the some more dark red Nordland potatoes. Now, I do like potatoes, and I do eat a lot of potatoes, but there is no way in heck that I can eat all of the potatoes that I planted. And that was my mistake with the potatoes this year. And I think I explained that in an earlier video. What I did was I made an order for seed potatoes, and I forgot that I submitted that order. So a month or two later, I got some other literature in, and I was like, ooh, I like these potatoes better. So I ordered them, and then, hang on, C-130. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, C-130 flew over. So I ordered that first set of potatoes, and then I ordered the second set of potatoes, and then they all came in, and I had a lot of potatoes. So the great thing is I have a variety, and I will be able to save some of them for myself. And the benefit, the side benefit, is that I'll be able to give away a lot of potatoes to family and friends. But as far as the economic use of my garden space, you know, you've already seen one harvest of the red Nordlands, the first set of red Nordlands, and then these are going to be more. We had a big rain yesterday. I mean, a big rain. And, you know, the potatoes in here, these are for sure not red Nordlands, but I'm hoping that they don't rot. So, because they're pretty damp right now. That one was pretty wet. And so I'm going to wait a couple days, let the soil dry up just a little bit, and then we're going to probably come through and harvest these beds, because I bet these are all ready. Yeah, here's one right on the surface. We just take this one out. Oh, it's a big one too. Come on. Just do it. All right, there we go. There you go. No way a red Nordland. This has got to be one of the others. It's got a little funky shape to it. And it's a little green too. And so that might mean that it was exposed to the sun a little bit. And we'll have to take a look at these. But yeah, these aren't going to come out as clean as the ones in the bag, because this soil stays a little bit damper. But for sure, the potatoes in this bed, I believe they're ready to come out. So lesson number 2, don't overplant. So lesson number 1, plant stuff you like. Lesson number 2, don't plant too much that you can't use it. All right, here's another lesson. All right, here you can see we've got more potatoes. And the lesson with these are going to be, first of all, just like lesson number 2, don't plant too many. But lesson number 3 is going to be handle your bug pressure early, or you'll end up with stuff like this. If you know, I've heard some gardeners say that they just let it be what it is. You know, if there's meant to be bugs in your garden, that's nature's way of taking care of business, and let it go. Okay, cool, but I don't want to waste a lot of time, effort, and money to put stuff in the ground and not have it come out. You know, so I did not handle the caterpillars as well as I should have, and therefore I got a lot of bug damage. Will it matter in the end? I'm not real sure. I think I'll still get potatoes. I still have plenty of the red ones. Looks like we've got some over there still. But on tomatoes, last year with the stink bugs, that was a whole year fight. And I'm watching some other people, mainly over in Georgia, they're having the stink bug problem this year, where it seems like our primary bug problem so far this year is caterpillars. And what's funny is I'm looking at a wasp right now, rolling through all the places where the caterpillars would traditionally be, because I think it's probably one of them big wasps that lays their eggs on the caterpillars. Though again, just like I told you before, I'm not a bug specialist. But you know, he's doing a pretty good job of hitting every branch looking for something. There you go. And hey, you know, that is nature's way of helping you out. So lesson number 3, identify pest problems early and get on to them. Don't let them linger. Okay, here is my determinate tomato bed. And in this bed are about 12 determinate tomato plants. I think there's 4 in each row. And boy, okay, there's 4 on the outside, on each outside row, and 3 on the inside, plus 1 basil plant. And boy, was that a mistake. When I say determinates, I was thinking, you know, grow 4 feet tall, kind of puff out a little bit, stay around the cage size, and that is not what happened at all. So what happened on the far end, and we'll take a pan over there in just a second, the 2 plants I bought from the store, which were 1 Celebrity and 1 Goliath, they got massive. I mean, massive. They're pulling the cage out of the ground over there, but they are loaded with tomatoes, both of them. Both of them are loaded up with tomatoes, and I was trying this year something new as far as determinants of just leave them alone and let them go. Like not trimming them up, not thinning them out. Because I have a tendency to overdo stuff. When I'm pruning, when I'm tinkering, I have a tendency to do too much, and it's probably detrimental to the plant. Well, I can tell you for sure this year I've left it alone, and the plants have gotten bigger than any of my other tomato plants have before. So, but the lesson to be learned here I failed to plan properly for the size of the garden that I have, and I overplanted. I put too many plants in too small of a space. So my solution for that is that we've just cleared out all those bags that had the potatoes in it. And I know potatoes are nightshades and so are tomatoes, and you're not supposed to plant one after the other, but I'm really kind of stuck as far as what I am going to be able to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some compost, I'm going to refurbish those bags the potatoes were in, and then I'm going to pull the center row out of here before they get too many tomatoes on them. If I lose the center row, that's okay. There's only a single plant. There's like a single celebrity, and then there's Florida 91 and another type of tomato in there. So I'll lose 3 plants, but that'll give room for the plants on the perimeter to expand out. Then I'll take those tomato plants when I rotate out the potatoes, and I'll put them over there on the irrigation so that they'll have a chance to live. I'm going to be handing out a lot of tomatoes this year, I got a feeling. So there's lesson number 4. Don't overplant your beds. Okay, here we go on the Handycam. And this is the other side of the tomato bed. And so you can see the Goliath one right here and the celebrity right there. And they have gotten huge. So we're not on the tripod, so we're going to be a little bit shaky. But if you can see the amount of tomatoes I've got. What the world? Okay. But there are a ton of tomatoes in there. And see, we're starting to get a little bit of bug damage. So I don't want to do anything to mess with these plants, because they both have tomatoes on them a lot, but they are too crowded in here. So these are the indeterminate tomatoes, and I thought that they would be the ones with the crowding problems, but I was going to grow them up the strings. So as you can see, they haven't really taken off, and I think maybe that's a soil thing, but I'm about to go ahead and trellis them and start tying them to the string so that they grow this way, so that they'll grow out and toward the tops of the strings, and then that should prevent them from doing that. Okay, let's move on to the next problem. Okay, lesson number 5, know what you're planting. All right, so here we have 2 different types of onions. This thin green one here and some of the ones with the flower, these are bunching onions, bunching onions, and so they were I saw them on a website, and they're like, you'll never have to buy onions again because these are multiplying onions, and they'll just keep making more and more onions. And that's true. I planted some in the ground. I planted 1. Now there's little clusters of 3. So you split out the clusters, and then you eat 2 of them, plant 1 back in the ground, and then that will just keep going through the seasons. But, the problem, here's the lesson number 5, know what you're planting and understand the plant's life cycle, because I planted them, and then I planted these are traditional onions. And, I saw them in the store and kind of impulse bought them. I was like, hey, I have an empty bed right now. I'll just put these in there. And that's what I did. And so now I don't know really much anything about them. I've looked on YouTube and stuff, and they say, hey, when the onions fall over and their necks become limp, they're ready. But this isn't what I was expecting, because they were supposed to bulb at some point. And maybe you're supposed to wait until this stuff dries out. I don't know. So there's a problem. I didn't know what I got myself into. I do know that I can snip these off and eat them, because they, and I hope you don't mind me eating out of the garden. I do it all the time. Oh, yeah, good onion flavor. So that's what I can do. I can chop these all up and then dry them out and then put them in like a shaker, and then I can add them to stuff for seasoning. But I certainly didn't get any bulbs, and maybe it's too soon. Maybe it's just starting the bulb. I don't know. Here comes a helicopter. Okay, what a surprise and a treat. It wasn't a helicopter. It was 2 V-22 Ospreys from the Special Forces guys. And while I was watching them fly over, kind of like my own personal air show, I was chomping on this and have decided that these are very delicious onions for the greens. Now, all the rest of them, they're not bent over or anything, so I'm just going to leave them in here. This one guy was bent over. Like I said, I don't know what that means. So hang him up here for right now. Well, I guess I'll hang them right here in the irrigation system. So there you go. 5 lessons. Let's refocus. All right, guys, here you go. There's 5 quick lessons that I've learned already this year. Everything from don't plant too much of any one thing. All right, first we have plant stuff you like. The lettuce, I really didn't know if I liked it. I used a whole bed. I could have put something else in that bed. Number 2, don't plant too much of one thing. I'm going to have potatoes and tomatoes actually coming out of my ears. There's no way I can eat all those by myself. Now, I do have the option of canning and preserving. All right, great. I have to learn how to do that, but I have to get them out of the ground, and then I'm going to have a whole bunch of empty gardens all at the same time. Number 3, get on the bug pressure, identify bug problems and bug pressure early, and deal with it often. And deal with it until it's done or mitigated. Now, you may not win the battle, but you may win the war in the end against bugs. Like last year with the stink bugs, I for sure did not win the war. I lost a lot to the stink bugs. But, you know, I did get produce. I got some, they got some, you know, it was detente. I didn't get everything I wanted. They didn't get everything they wanted either. So this year, I could have been a little bit more aggressive with the caterpillars, but it still looks like I'm going to have good crops, and even though I'm on it and aware of it now. Number 4, don't overplant your beds. Make sure that you, whether you're using the square foot gardening method, make sure if you're using different style methods or reading right off the pack, that you plant and give your plants enough space to grow and spread out. And that way you'll have a good productive season without overcrowding. Overcrowding brings bug problems, it brings rot, it brings blight, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So make sure that you have enough space between your plants. And it looks like I've got a blue jay that's, me and this blue jay kind of hung out last year, if it's the same one. And he was the bug destroyer, and he's just off camera right now. And I bet he's a fan of the caterpillars also, so good. And then our last, but not least, point of the day is know what you're planting. So at least have an idea of what you're putting in the ground. Like for example, with my onions, you know, I do have bunching onions, and they are bunched, you know, and they do well. But the bulbing onions, I don't know what I'm doing with those. So I'm going to have to research, but look, I've tied up 2 garden beds now with stuff that I don't know when they're going to be done. Now, is it fun? Yep, it's fun. I enjoy coming out here. I've actually cut the tops off a couple times when I was doing baked potatoes and stuff, and I've enjoyed the crap out of these onions, and I'm going to keep perpetuating them in the garden. But I'm looking at my carrot bed right here. That carrot bed's been in the ground forever. Probably getting ready to come out. But I've never had luck with carrots. If you've seen before, they're always all this big. So we'll see how that goes. But all right, 5 lessons for you this year already, and we're just into May. Imagine how much more we're going to learn together as the summer goes through. I can't wait. I'm very excited about this. This summer we're going to do some okra. Hopefully we'll get some watermelons. You know, we're going to try a bunch of different stuff. I'm trying sweet potatoes for the first time, and they look like they're doing okay. So we'll see how it goes. But it's Carl from Cultivate with Carl, and come back next week for a garden update, and hit that like button and subscribe, and hey, tell a friend. And if you see me out on the street, stop and say, hey, I love talking to people about their gardens. I won't talk to you about mine all the time. I'll let you get a word or two in edgewise, because I want to hear what you're growing and how well you're doing, and maybe you can help me out with some of these things that I've learned this year in the garden. Till next time, it's Carl signing off from Cultivate with Carl.